midlife wasn't the end of the story, but really the start of your strongest chapter. On the Tamsin Show, Emmy Award-winning journalist and New York Times best-selling author Tamsin Fadal has the conversations that too many women were never invited to. She's joined by powerhouse guests like Halle Berry and Stacey London, along with leading experts on dating in midlife, navigating divorce, and building real confidence for what comes next. Y'all, this isn't small talk, it's real talk. Smart, unfiltered, and deeply relatable. Whether you're facing brain fog, hot flashes, I can relate, or total life reset, the Tamsin Show is your guide to clarity, strength, and connection as you move forward. New episodes drop every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcast, because you shouldn't have to go through this in the dark. And you'll never again have to ask, why didn't anyone tell me? Listen to the Tamsin Show. Your strongest chapter starts here. Okay, let's start the show. And yes, that music means happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to the Joy Reid Show. Big up to everybody that's listening and watching on YouTube, Substack, and wherever you get your podcasts. Want to make y'all know that this podcast is actually available wherever you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple, iTunes. Everybody can listen to it everywhere. So hopefully you're doing that. Hello to everyone in the chats. We're looking at the chats on YouTube, also the Substack chats. And especially big ups to our Team TJRS members. You guys are extra, super duper, uber special. Hope you guys had a nice weekend. I want to also let y'all know, thank you to everybody who's bought merch. And if you've bought some merch, be sure to tag us in your social media posts. You can tag me at Joy Ann Reid. That's JoyAnnReid. Or also tag the show at Joy Reid Show on IG and also on TikTok. You can also use the hashtag Wearing Joy. And also the hashtag readers. If you're a Team TJRS member, also throw in a hashtag Team TJRS as well, because why not? So let's get caught up on what's happening in the news today. Trump feds, because, it is the season, tear gas, I should say, not tar gas, but probably they'll start doing that too. They tear gassed a city block in Chicago where a Halloween parade was about to take place. Because of course, here's a little bit of video of that.
Chicago's northwest side expressing outrage tonight after federal agents once again deploy chemical agents against protesters. This time, it happened as parents and children were heading to a neighborhood Halloween parade.
Tear gas at Old Irving Park right now. Our own neighborhood, scaring our children.
Chaos rocks a quiet northwest side neighborhood.
Started hearing some whistles, and when I looked out, I saw two fully uniformed Customs and Border Patrol agents tackling a guy to the ground, literally in my front yard right here.
That man had been working construction on a nearby home when federal agents chased him down and took him into custody in the 3700 block of North Kildare. His brother saying he's an undocumented immigrant who came to the U.S. with his family at 4 years of age.
Out of here, man.
Within moments, angry neighbors poured out of their homes, joining protesters blowing whistles who'd been on patrol looking for federal agents.
I don't understand how you could think this way, man. Scaring the children.
As angry residents shouted, the federal agents began lobbing tear gas around 9:50 Saturday morning. That's just minutes before the scheduled start of an annual Halloween parade organized by the Old Irving Park Association.
You had folks who were literally out on the street taking their kids to this Halloween parade when this happened. And I didn't see anybody with a weapon. I didn't see anybody make physical contact with these agents. I didn't see anybody do anything that justified, for example, taking my 7-year-old neighbor to the ground.
Culp says his 70-year-old neighbor was also taken into custody.
Get out! Get out! Get out!
After about a half hour, the agents got in their cars and drove away. The Halloween party was held, but neighbors say many people stayed home. Culp, who's a former Cook County prosecutor, retrieved the chemical canisters and gave them to a law firm that is preparing a lawsuit against the federal government.
I was pretty upset, to be honest with you. I am an attorney. I used to work with and in law enforcement, and watching this happen in my front yard was just not something that I ever thought was going to come to my front door. But, here we are.
Here we are. So yeah, welcome to Trump America, everybody, where you have no voting rights and no civil rights, but not to worry. You won't have to hear foreign languages or foreign accents in the Walmart or Home Depot because the masked secret police are tackling, arresting, and tear gassing anybody who isn't a white conservative, and also taking 4-year-olds to the ground in order to protect a local community from, let me check my notes, an undocumented immigrant with a good job who happened to have come to this country when he was 4. So of course that means he's a master criminal and he has to be protected. The community has to be protected from him, right? And so while all of that mess is taking place, your president is busy working on his new $300 million ballroom after bulldozing the entire East Wing of the White House. You're welcome. He's also answering poorly framed questions from the media while on Air Force One about whether he plans to try for a 3rd term and then saying, yeah, I mean, sure, of course, I passed the cognitive test. Ugh.
They are good people.
You said that for 2028, they're very good people.
Well, we have great people. Well, I don't have to get into that, but we have one of them standing right here. We have JD, obviously. The vice president is great. I think Marco's great. I think, I'm not sure if anybody would run against us. I think if they ever formed a group, it would be unstoppable. I really do. I believe that. I would love to do it. I have my best numbers ever. It's very terrible. I have my best numbers. See, if you read it, am I not ruling it out? I mean, you'll have to tell me. All I can tell you is that we have a great group of people, which they don't. They have Jasmine Crockett, a low IQ person. They have AOC's low IQ. You give her an IQ test, have her pass like the exams that I decided to take when I was at Walter Reed. Those are very hard, they're really aptitude tests, I guess, in a certain way, but they're cognitive tests. Let AOC go against Trump. Let Jasmine go against Trump. I don't think Jasmine, the first couple of questions are easy. A tiger, an elephant, a giraffe, you know. When you get up to about 5 or 6, and then when you get up to 10 and 20 and 25, they couldn't come close to answering any of those questions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so first of all, Don, dementia, Don. You do realize that cognitive test is what you take when people fear that you might have cognitive decline because you got dementia, right? Those are dementia tests. So AOC and Jasmine Crockett are like 40 to 50 years too young to take that test that you took. The fact that you're being asked whether you can recognize a picture of a giraffe or a cow, that means that people worry that you might have dementia. Those young ladies, that's not an IQ test. I don't think you know the difference between an IQ test and a cognitive test. They don't need to take those because they're not senior citizens who maybe have dementia. You, on the other hand, have now been for your annual physical twice. Annual usually means once a year, Don. Okay? Just trying to help you out because, you know, obviously you're not super duper bright. Now, by the way, also the right question to have asked Donald Trump would not have been, do you think you have really good people to replace you? It would have been, the 22nd Amendment says you can't serve a 3rd term. Do you plan on defying the Constitution? That would have actually been a good question. But the media, you know, you can't help them out. They also did this thing on the White House where they tried to justify wrecking the East Wing to build what I have to call, and I think everyone should call it, the Epstein Ballroom, because they're doing this while not releasing the Epstein files. So to build the Epstein Ballroom, to justify it, they put up on the White House website a history of presidents who've made renovations to the White House. But in place of the Democrats, they just put crass defamation of the 3 most recent Democratic presidents. I'm not even going to link to it. Just Google it. It's the most disrespectful, stupid thing ever. I'm actually working on a Substack about it. Donald Trump is a disrespectful ass. And it's why I don't respect him. I don't feel like I owe him any respect because he doesn't respect any previous president or the presidency. So F him. Donald Trump also has more people to add to his demand list for Pamela Joe to prosecute his named enemies. He's not just demanding that the DOJ pay him a $230 million bribe that he says he has the final say on paying, which we played in our last show. He also wants Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, prosecuted next. Now, Jack Smith, no shy guy, has responded. He's come out saying, okay, he wants to testify publicly. House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan, the guy from Ohio who may have looked the other way while there was a pedophile attacking the wrestlers that were under his care. That guy has demanded that Jack Smith come and testify to his committee. But here's what Jack Smith said. It's not on screen. I'm just going to read it to you. He said, given his lawyer put out a statement saying, given the many mischaracterizations of Mr. Smith's investigation into President Trump's alleged mishandling of classified documents theft and role, he said that he didn't say theft, I did, and role in attempting to overturn the results of the 2020 election, Mr. Smith respectfully requests the opportunity to testify in open hearings before the House and Senate Judiciary Committee. That was the letter that his attorneys wrote to Jordan. Smith's effort to appear publicly would require the blessing of, the Justice Department. Pamela Joe would have to approve it. And his attorneys have said he would also need guidance so that he doesn't violate any rules regarding grand jury secrecy, because there were grand juries in that case. He would also likely be asked to answer questions about the Mar-a-Lago investigation. The special counsel's final report on that case has not yet been released. The lawyer saying, in addition to what I just read you, that Jack Smith is prepared to answer questions about the special counsel investigation, the prosecution, and all of it, but he needs assurances from the DOJ that he will not be punished for doing so, meaning he would testify and then they would charge him with violating grand jury secrecy and charge him with a crime. So all that is according to The Hill. So go ahead and add Jack Smith's name to Letitia James, indicted. James Comey, the former FBI director, indicted. Fonnie Willis being investigated for taking a work junket because they just need something to try to prosecute her for. Adam Smith threatened with indictment, all on Trump's hit list. On Truth Social, Trump also demanded Merrick Garland, Merrick the Mild. He wants Merrick the Mild. Merrick Garland indicted for I don't even know what. He wants former Justice Department official Lisa Monaco, who was in the national security side of it, he wants her indicted, and many others, and mainly regarding him being investigated for having ties to Russia during his campaign. He's also claiming that somebody rigged the 2020 election that he lost to Joe Biden. He's also busy focusing on that, and of course also the Epstein ballroom and Fuhrer bunker, which has been funded by a couple dozen billionaires who are like forking over, in some cases, maybe $10 to $25 million in gratitude for their permanent record-breaking tax cut, which was made permanent by the same Republicans who refused to make your Obamacare healthcare subsidies permanent, and who are sending 42 million SNAP recipients into the food lines, which we've already seen all over the DMV, all over Maryland and Virginia, because those benefits for SNAP actually run out on November 1st. So if you get SNAP, your benefits will come to a screeching halt within like a week. And also, Republicans are allowing the healthcare benefits, those subsidies for Obamacare, to expire on December 31st. But in November, that's when people start open enrollment. So people are screwed for healthcare. That's about 22 million people, about 42 million people who are screwed for SNAP, including children. But the super rich, they got to keep their tax cut, which was originally written to be temporary, just like the Obamacare subsidies. But the billionaires get to have their tax cut be permanent, but you don't get to have your subsidies be permanent. I will also note that they are making sure they pay the military, because Trump is like, I don't want a military coup. Let me go ahead and make sure these people get paid. And I'm going to talk in the second hour about some of the machinations to make sure the military gets paid. But they've also accepted a $130 million gift to pay the troops that was given by a billionaire named Timothy Mellon of the Mellon family, the Mellon fortune. And Timothy Mellon's already gotten the hookup from Trump because he's one of the billionaires who got the record-breaking tax cut. By the way, he used to live in Connecticut, but he moved to Wyoming to escape state taxes as well. So basically, he doesn't pay taxes at all at this point. Trump and his Republicans have already hooked him up, so now he's trying to hook up the military. This while thousands of federal workers have now officially missed their first paychecks. That's about 670,000 workers who've been furloughed and who may not get paid. Trump is threatening not to pay them at all, according to a tally by the Bipartisan Policy Center. There's an additional 730,000 federal workers who right now are working without pay, including TSA agents and maybe some air traffic controllers. So they're not even getting paid. So that's where we are in America. We are in a situation where Republicans and their king, Donald Trump, are defunding SNAP such that people will not be able to eat food. This is right before Thanksgiving. They're allowing the healthcare premium support for Obamacare, meaning plussed up Medicaid, which is used by any small business, not just by who you would think uses it. Obamacare is used by a lot of small businesses. It's used by a lot of freelancers, a lot of Uber drivers, people who have a small farm. Those people are all using Obamacare, right? Because that's the way to get affordable healthcare. The premiums are about to spike. And when those premiums spike, everyone's premiums are going to spike, because insurance companies are going to be able to just do bloodletting. They're going to be able to just do whatever they want. We're going to be in a free fire zone for insurance companies. So your healthcare is going to go up. When SNAP it goes away, a lot of small groceries are going to be in trouble. Companies like Walmart and Kraft, Kraft is one of the largest recipients of food SNAP spending because macaroni and cheese is perhaps the most frequently bought. It used to be the most frequently bought item when it comes to SNAP benefits because you can't spend SNAP benefits like cash. You have to spend them on food. I think I described in the last show, there used to be a green food stamp and a blue food stamp. And the blue food stamp you could spend on canned goods or any foods, but the green you had to spend on produce or on farm products so that it was also a subsidy to farmers. It's still a subsidy to American businesses and farmers because you spend all your SNAP benefits. You don't get to keep the change. You just spend it all, right? And you spend it in stores. One of the biggest supporters of SNAP, AKA food stamps, Walmart. Because a lot of people who live in communities that don't have a lot of grocery stores, they go to Walmart and they spend the SNAP benefits there. And again, you can't buy liquor with it. You can't buy steak with it. You can only buy the foodstuffs on a certain list. So people who try to claim that people are out there living large buying T-bone steak, that's not true. But now they're not going to have that at all. And I don't mean it's going to be cut. They're going to not have it at all. At all. Okay, so that's going to go out the door on the 1st of November. The subsidies for your health care are going to be gone by the end of the year of the 31st. And, but the tax cuts for billionaires, which were written to be temporary, exactly like the Obamacare subsidies, both things were passed with an end date on them in order to make them fit the budget math. It's magical Washington budget making. They make a budget. They say, I'm going to spend this much money on healthcare, but we're going to expire it on this date. And that's how they make it seem like it's a little more affordable. They did that with the Obamacare subsidies, and they did that with the 2017 tax cuts. But the tax cuts have been made permanent. But the healthcare subsidies are like, nah, that has to expire. Or we have to negotiate about that. Why? We're going to show you guys a chart in a little bit when our guest gets here to just show you how egregious this is, because the amount of money that was spent on the tax cuts versus the amount of money that's spent on those subsidies, night and freaking day. This is why I say that what's happening right now is the steal, that we are the ones who need to stop the steal. We on this side are the ones who need to stop the steal because they're stealing your money. You pay taxes, but you can't get it back if you're in need and get it back in food stamps. You can't get back the subsidies farmers are getting. Those are going away. They're selling away, giving away farmers markets. They're saying, you don't have a market anymore for your beef if you're a cattle rancher. We're giving that to Venezuela. We're giving 40 billion of your tax dollars to Venezuela, stealing that to give to Milei so that he can get reelected and so that his party can get reelected in Venezuela. So Trump's friends are hooked up. They're letting oil companies drill in Alaska. They're going to probably get to drill in our national parks. They get to run wild. They get subsidies as well. They're still got contracts that are still flowing to all the billionaires that had them before, right? Elon Musk, all of them get accepted. So they're getting money. I just need you all to understand and wrap your mind around the fact that rich people in this country, billionaires and billionaire corporations are eating. Who's not going to be eating is you. Your rent's still going to go up. Your mortgage is still going to go up. Your interest rates are still high. You still can't afford your housing. And now if you are on SNAP, you're not going to be able to have any food. But the billionaires are good. And Trump gets a $300 million Epstein ballroom on top of his Fuhrer bunker because they're renovating the bunker. And they're making sure they pay the military so they don't have to worry about a military coup. Because if you go back to even places like Iraq, the way that the military turns on you is they ain't getting paid. And so if you are an autocrat, the one thing you better do is make sure the military gets paid. That's a whole bunch of trained, armed people. You don't want them to be angry and broke. But whole different thing. And by the way, I will note that the way that the federal government paid the military is they kind of broke a law because they took some money from one pot that Congress had passed for one purpose. It was for research or something in the Pentagon and shifted that money over to payroll. And I'm glad the military folks are getting paid. We want our military to get paid. That wasn't legal, but they've done it anyway to make sure that they get paid. And they're going to accept this $130 million gift from a billionaire, which I don't know if that's legal either, but they're going to do it so that they can get paid. But they're not going to take the same extraordinary action to make sure that SNAP benefits happen. One of our sources sent me some photos earlier, which I will also put up on the Substack, of media people showing up in front of Walmarts trying to interview people about whether they're going to have food stamps next week. So people already understand that people are about to be missing their food stamps. That's happening. That is coming. That's coming. It's stop the steal time. Stop the steal for real. Because the people who are actually stealing are Republicans and Trump. Stealing money to give to Argentina, that's your money. Stealing money to stuff permanent tax cuts into the pockets of every billionaire. It's like 1,000 people who got tax cuts, but 42 million people are going to lose SNAP. 22 million people are going to lose their Obamacare premium subsidies. So those 42 million and those 22 million, nobody's supposed to care about them. But those 1,000 that got the most extraordinary tax cut in history, that's permanent. And they get to keep that forever. And they're looking to pass more tax cuts for them. You're not probably going to get that. We have a good guest we're going to talk to when they get here. Y'all let me know when they're here. But this is the reality that we're working from today. They're also paying ICE. Not only that, but they canceled student loan forgiveness for you. But you know who gets their student loans forgiven? People who sign up for ICE. So let's just wrap our heads around that. If you are willing to tackle brown and black people in the street and terrorize people at school parking lots, in churches, in hospitals, ERs, if you're willing to march into immigration court and drag people out who are having a literal, legitimate hearing, if you're willing to do that, you can get your student loans forgiven. But if you want to be a teacher, or you want to work with kids, you want to, you want to help, you've gone to college for something else, you want to be a college professor or a business person, you don't get your student loan forgiveness. They canceled that. But they, if you're standing up for ICE, they get their student loans forgiven. They're still also getting paid. So we just want to notice who is being favored and who is not. Who is getting favor and who is not. The king's people get favor. The king's billionaire friends. And by the way, you're also paying for what they did to the East Wing of the White House. You do know that, right? The money that they are getting from these billionaires is for construction. But the destruction of that building, I'm going to assume we paid for that. And if you really believe that all of that money to do his $300 million ballroom is going to only come from anonymous billionaires, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. It's called the Brooklyn Bridge. You can have it for a mere bag of shells. Because you're going to pay for that too. Because Trump needs to have his Fuhrer bunker updated. And that's a national security reconstruct, right? That's going to have to be done by the Army Corps of Engineers, I'm assuming. And you pay them. So we're going to pay for that as well. So Trump gets to have his luxuries. He's got crypto cash rolling in. His kids have crypto cash rolling in. They're all becoming extraordinarily wealthy, much wealthier than Trump ever could have become from being a real estate developer. He's supposed to be the greatest real estate developer in history, but he was never able to get to even 1 billion off of the thing he's supposed to be an expert in. I want you to I'm gonna say it again. Donald Trump never became a billionaire from the thing he's supposed to be an expert in, the thing he got hired to be on The Apprentice to do, which is be a real estate developer. He never became a billionaire off of that. In fact, most people believe he would have made the same amount of money that he ultimately made, which is a lot of money, like $400 million, if he had just taken the $317 million he inherited from his daddy and put it in a money market. If he had just done that, he'd have the exact same amount of money that he ended up with by the time he became president. The way Trump has become a billionaire in 6 months is whatever he's doing on the background with these crypto schemes. This crypto money is how he's a billionaire. And his kids, his sons, who never would have become billionaires, and really not that smart. Let's bring in our guest. I believe we have, let's bring in LaMonica McIver. Let's bring in Congresswoman LaMonica McIver. Do we have her? Oh, there she is.
Hey, Joy.
Hey, Congresswoman, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. I appreciate you being here. I'm from the great state of New Jersey. I want to start just by asking you how your constituents are doing in dealing with the impending loss of their SNAP benefits.
Folks are worried, Joy. Today, I just left my office here in Newark, New Jersey, and we were putting together a list of food distribution locations, talking with many of our organizations who do weekly food and sometimes daily food distributions, making sure that we have the information ready, putting together communication tools for my constituents. I mean, they're super worried. I mean, not being able to buy food and being impacted by this shutdown, it's going to be crazy.
And, I've added up. I do believe that the House has only been in session a total during this this sort of session for like 12 days, I think. You guys have
Correct.
been out for a month. You guys worked for 12 days. Members of Congress still get paid.
Yep.
The speaker still gets paid. And yet he will not reconvene the House. It seems only because he doesn't want to put Adelita Grijalva in, because he knows that that means they're going to have to do a discharge petition and release the Epstein files, which is why I am now calling the ballroom the Epstein ballroom, because it seems to me the people being served in this moment are the billionaires who can afford to give $25 million for the ballroom, the kind of people, I'm not saying the exact people, but the kind of people Jeffrey Epstein serviced with his disgusting trade in girls, the kind of people who were making him a billionaire. He was also a billionaire. The billionaire class is doing quite well. And Donald Trump, who is the protector, the chief protector of the worst pedophile in this country's history, he gets a ballroom. Do you know, are you able to determine how much we're paying for the deconstruction of the East Wing? Because I know we're paying something.
No, we haven't gotten a number of how much. I mean, we first it started as $230 million for this entire project. Now it's up to 300 million. I mean, literally, the administration is not sharing any information with Congress regarding this. Obviously, the president did this without getting any approvals from Congress, you know, just doing it. And it's sad that we have a president claiming that this is his main priority right now, when we have literally almost 40 million Americans who are going to be kicked off SNAP benefits. And as you mentioned, Joy, members of Congress, the president and his cabinet, they're getting checks, they're getting paid probably, you know, and it's sad. That's why I put my personal check on hold as well, because I don't think it's right that, you know, we have people who are not getting paychecks and members of Congress, especially Republicans, are collecting a paycheck.
Right. And staff don't get paid, right? Or do they?
Correct. Yep.
They
Staff
don't.
are getting paid as well.
I want to play a video. Jason, we're going to pull for B1, and because we have the Congresswoman here, I want to just remind people while Jason is pulling that, I want to go back and just remind people of the thing that unfortunately too many people know you from. And this was to go back to the very early days of the mass detention, mass deportation scheme that this administration has launched, which again, I want to just point out to the audience, is a money-making scheme. It is a money-making scheme. These private prison companies were one of the biggest donors to Donald Trump. They donated millions and millions of dollars to Donald Trump. Companies like Core Civic, they were saying to their own investors that this was going to be huge for their bottom lines, that mass detention and mass deportation were going to be great for their bottom lines. And I want to also note that these are the kinds of people who met in secret and got taped with Tom Homan, giving him a kava bag full of cash, $50,000, because he was promising to get people contracts for this very thing. So this is the setup. Now I want to remind you all, those of you who have not been listening to the Joy Reid Show from the very beginning, that back in June, 3 members of Congress attempted to go and look into one of these private prison facilities, which the mayor of Newark, Ras Baraka, has said has been operating illegally in the state of New Jersey. You all went to do your oversight. You had a right to do it. The members who went were Representatives Rob Menendez Jr., Bonnie Watson Coleman, who I will note, I believe is in her 70s, and yourself, Representative McIver, to try to, and you guys have a right to do oversight. And let's show what happened. Jason, please.
Get off of her! You cannot push it! You cannot Congress! You can't push members of Congress!
This is peaceful! You are fascists!
Get off of her!
Peaceful! You are fascists! This is peaceful! Get off of her! Get off of her!
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
You can see you're trying to physically defend the elder Congresswoman, who again, I think she's in her late 70s, maybe even a little older, Bonnie Watson Coleman. You're physically trying to defend her, and you end up getting arrested and charged with the crime. Talk about the state of the case, the federal case. You were the first member of Congress to be prosecuted by this regime. What is the state of that case?
Yeah, so first of all, Joy, I was not arrested. I found out I was being charged via Twitter from our U.S. attorney, acting U.S. attorney at the time, Alina Habba. I was there, as you mentioned, not to protest, not to have a rally. We were there to go for an oversight visit, which is something we've done before. As of right now, those charges continue to be pursued upon me by Trump's Department of Justice. We just recently was in court a week ago arguing our motions to dismiss this case on two counts, really two motions that we really feel very strong about. One is vindictive prosecution, and another is definitely my ability there to do my job. I was there doing my job, so how am I being charged, for doing so? We argued those, and now we're waiting for a judge to give us an opinion on that, a federal judge, on his opinion on the case. And so that's where we're at right now. Joy, it's been horrible. It's been awful, going through this as a, new member of Congress, especially when you're just showing up, doing the job and protecting the people who have elected you to protect them, to make sure that you're holding this administration accountable. So to be going through this, still, pushing forward and trying to, get through it, it's absolutely crazy, and we see
Yeah.
this with me one day, and now we see so many other folks being vindictively prosecuted by Trump's Department of Justice, that he has weaponized the highest office to go after people who are his critics and that he does not agree with, and that we hold him accountable. And so that's what we have to deal with.
Right. I mean, you were the first, but you, of course, as you said, have not been the last. Obviously, James Comey, the former FBI director, Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York. Donald Trump has his eye on more people. He wants Jack Smith prosecuted for rightly investigating and indicting him for trying to overthrow the government and taking classified documents he wasn't entitled to. He wants Merrick Garland prosecuted. Merrick Garland didn't even do anything while he was there for 4 years. He was an inert object, but he apparently was not inert enough for Donald Trump. He wants him prosecuted. Lisa Monaco. He wants, obviously, Fani Willis prosecuted because she had a righteous case against him for literally saying, can you just find me 11,000 votes so that I can steal Georgia? He said it in a recorded phone call. So, that is the way that Donald Trump operates. He wants revenge against those who are trying to hold him accountable. But in your case, Congresswoman, you were there trying to find out who was in that facility and how they were being treated and
Correct.
whether they had even been charged with crimes. Have you found the answers out to those questions?
So we found out in many, even shout out to one of my local papers who did like a investigative, whole story on this location. There were people there who did not have a record. We even spoke to some of them while we were there taking our tour, because we did end up getting the tour, Joy, after all of that, that ICE and Homeland created. We were able to speak to people, and folks were literally in there because they were, undocumented. Some were picked up at court. Some of them were just picked up, off of the street. And we did discover that this place was not up to par to be operating. A couple of weeks later, Joy, they actually had a riot there where 4 detainees actually broke out. They were upset because they were not getting properly fed. They had not had anything to eat in days, and the detainees were upset. And so they broke out through a makeshift wall that did not have a permit and was not properly inspected. And so that was the reason why the mayor was sounding the alarm about this facility, and the reason why we showed up as members of Congress. We have the right to do so, to have an oversight visit of this location. And look what happened, just weeks later, at this facility. The reason why oversight is so important.
Yeah, and the Congress has been a disaster when it comes to oversight. The Republican Congress won't do any oversight at all, down to even the questions of spending. The power of the purse in the Federalist Papers was said to be the greatest power, and it is the power that can most constrain the president from becoming a king. Because if you can cut off the money, it's like cutting off his allowance, right? And it's the one power, and that actually resides in the House. Technically, the House and the Senate are the first branch of government. Trump, not even technically, the administration, the president is the second branch of government, Article 2. The fact that the House of Representatives refuses to act under the current speaker is really outrageous to me. Do you know whether or not checks are still being written to pay private prison facilities like the one you tried to inspect? Are they still getting their money during the shutdown?
Well, technically, I don't know, but Joy, I don't doubt it. I mean, this Speaker Johnson and Republicans are allowing the president, they're bending the knee every second they get. They are not holding him accountable. They've literally given up their power as elected officials, members of Congress, to this president to do whatever he wants. And so I'm sure this president is writing checks, doing whatever he wants, and saying basically screw Congress, screw Speaker Johnson. I heard that there's jokes about how they've totally taken over Speaker Johnson and all of this other stuff that's out there. And of course, I mean, look, they are not doing the job that the people elected them to do. And that is why the people should vote them out come this midterm, because they are not holding this administration accountable.
Well, I mean, if we have free and fair elections, which I highly doubt we will have, I mean, we're going to have, there will be troops in the streets of Newark and any other blue city,
Yep.
Especially with, Ras Baraka in charge of Newark. There will be troops at the polls. I want to circle back to SNAP for just a moment, because, I have been reframing this to me as stop the steal, but it's stop the steal for real. Because
Yeah.
as I see it, the power of the purse is being stolen by the White House, but they're using it to take money from ordinary, hardworking people, from people in urban centers, people who have SNAP, people who work every day, but make a minimum wage. So they need food support, right? Most people who are on SNAP have a job. They do work already, or they're
Yeah.
disabled, or they work a job that pays them so little that they still need food help, et cetera. Those people get their money taken away. They get their SNAP taken away. Okay. Billionaires still get their tax cuts. Rich people like Elon Musk still get their fat contract. Everybody seems to be getting paid but the regular person. But on
Yep.
SNAP specifically, my understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that the way SNAP was put together, it has a contingency fund that has about $5 billion in it that could be released today to make sure that at least that first tranche of SNAP benefits, those first EBT cards, get filled with money. And that there is a second tranche of money that has been used before when WIC, which is the Women, Infant, and Children's Program, which feeds people when they just had a baby, that has been pulled in before during a shutdown to make sure WIC was made whole. Has there been any talk in the United States House of Representatives among your Republican colleagues to activate or to demand that the Agriculture Department use that contingency money for SNAP?
Not that I've seen, but Democrats have personally been making calls and spearheading letters to them, asking them to use these dollars that are available, which I believe is $6 billion that is available for them to use. I think the whole coverage would be about $8 billion to cover for the month of November. But we're saying use what you can and use the extra to be able to make sure that our American families are not going hungry, right, for the month of November. But literally no response. We've heard that the administration has pushed back on that, saying that they would not use the dollars to do so. We haven't heard much from Republicans, especially not the Speaker of the House, about it, which is awful because for folks in Louisiana, Joy, they get SNAP benefits. So for him to be silent on this matter is awful, but we haven't heard anything.
It is people in states like Louisiana who get SNAP benefits, because Louisiana is a much poorer state than New Jersey. So the constituents of the Speaker are much more likely to be on what used to be called food stamps than people in Newark.
Absolutely. And many others from many other red states as well. They benefit. I know here in New Jersey, we have about 800,000 people who benefit from SNAP benefits. And so at the end of the day, we should not be having this conversation about why we are not funding and doing all that we can to fund our SNAP program to make sure that our families are able to feed, each other, like that they can go out and buy food that they need. It's really awful. It just shows you how we have leaders that are not operating, putting their constituents first.
Let me ask if there is if for instance, let's say if Adalita Grijalva gets, she's not going to get sworn. Let's say she did get sworn in. Would there be a way to do a discharge petition to try to demand that the administration, first of all, spend money as it was told to spend it by Congress, but also demanding that they do literally what they've done for the military? And they broke the law to do that. There is no contingency fund to pay the military, but they found money and they've paid the troops, which is a good thing. We're all happy the troops are getting paid. A lot of them probably need food stamps sometimes. I've seen them standing in some lines. I've seen people in full military uniform standing in some lines getting free groceries.
Yeah, some service members do get SNAP. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Could, in theory, Congress pass a short-term appropriation or a short-term bill to force that to happen?
Yes,
if Republicans would.
Correct. Yes, it is possible, Joy. If Speaker Johnson would actually call us back to work, would if he would actually put the House back in session, of course we would be able to. And I'm sure a few Republicans who are, getting calls from their constituents and are concerned about this as well. I'm just optimistic, Joy, that there are just a few Republicans who are not worried about just bending the knee to Donald Trump and really worried about their constituents being able to buy food. I think we can possibly do that.
The fact that they're doing this with Thanksgiving literally around the corner to me is so barbaric. In the richest country in the world that can afford to give 1,000 billionaires a permanent tax cut for the rest of their lives, in which major corporations like Amazon pay zero taxes at all. They don't pay taxes zero. They pay none. And in which even when Fox got fined $787 million, they just passed that along, to their shareholders or got a big tax cut that ate it up. Like billionaires and corporations get away with everything. And whereas regular people struggle, it's shocking to me. And I wonder if you as a new member of Congress have been surprised how corrupt this system is and how broken it is when ordinary people can't eat, but billionaires are literally going to ballroom fundraisers at Mar-a-Lago and promising $25 million for his Epstein ballroom.
Yeah, well, Joy, you served on the city council. I think I've said this before on your show for 7.5 years as the councilwoman and the council president in the largest city in New Jersey. And the reason why I decided to come to Congress was to fight for more because I knew locally what we really needed on the federal side for my constituents. I had no idea I would get here. One, be facing two felony counts and one misdemeanor, and two, seeing this happen where leaders just don't give a damn. A president who does not care about working class people, about the Americans that he's supposed to serve, or picking which Americans are important to him. I've never seen something like this, and so I'm shocked each and every day of how we're operating. Just in this point, in this moment of time where we have folks don't care about giving people health care, kicking people off of Medicaid, not wanting to expand the ACA tax credits, and now SNAP benefits. It is literally overwhelming every day to me to see that this is the way the federal government operates. This is the way Republicans are failing to serve the people who have elected them. It's truly unbelievable. And so, every day I'm praying, Joy, that it gets better, because it has to get better for the people that I represent. I'm charged with protecting them and serving them, and knowing that I'm not able to do that underneath this federal, leadership, this Republican-led House and Senate and White House. It's honestly depressing, Joy, seriously.
I'm sure it's depressing, I think, for all of us out here, sis. I agree with you on that. Exit question regarding the governor's race. I was deeply disappointed, to be honest, that people did not show up for Ras Baraka the way he showed up for the people, and that the turnout was so low in that primary, just abysmally low. And so in this low turnout primary, we wound up with a moderate, I would argue, candidate who's facing a pretty serious challenge from the Republican. What is your message to folks in New Jersey that could get them to fight this madness with what might be our last year to vote in a free and fair election? Like, this is it. Like, I'm not sure we'll have free and fair elections ever again after this year. So it's like, it's use it or lose it time. What is your message to voters in New Jersey about, and what do you think of the Democratic nominee?
Yeah, well, obviously, I was definitely a supporter of Ras Baraka, phenomenal leader, literally progressive and doing amazing things in the state altogether. Obviously, I've been on the campaign trail for Mikey Sherrill and her Lieutenant Governor Dale Carwell. And the bottom line is we need a fighter and a protector from this president and his administration. And right now, Mikey is the best that could be able to do that. And so, while I'm fighting and protecting in Congress, definitely I want to have a governor to do so that most of her values and mission aligns to what is important to the people that I represent. And so it's going to be a tight race. We're fighting really hard. We're running really hard to make sure we can deliver, because we do not want a baby Trump here in New Jersey. We do not want a governor who is going to welcome welcome this dangerous president into our state and give him a literally front row seat to do whatever he wants on many of our cities. Like you mentioned, Joy, we will have military on the streets of Newark and
Yeah.
all of our urban cities up and down New Jersey. And we don't want that. We cannot afford Trump. He is dangerous to us. And so we are literally sounding the alarm for New Jerseyans to understand what this election means. And elections have consequences. We're living it right now with Donald Trump. And we want
Yeah.
folks to understand that we do not want a baby Trump to be able to do whatever they want to do to our citizens, American citizens, by
Yeah.
the way, here in New Jersey. And so we're encouraging people to get out there and vote for Mikey Sherrill for sure.
All right. You heard it here first. LaMonica McIver, Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, thank you so much. Keep up the good fight. We'll be following your case. I think you have a very, very strong case for malicious prosecution, just based on the things Donald Trump has said and what was done. We could see it with our own eyes. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you for being here. Be well.
Thanks, Joy.
Thank you very much. All right, let's do a quick ad break before we do a little bit more. And I am going to talk about this hurricane that's barreling down on Jamaica. But I want to just tell y'all that I am actually really excited about our new sponsor because this is something that I think a lot of people deal with. And that is high blood pressure. It is a big deal. We've seen all of these hip hop artists dying young in their 40s and 50s. And a lot of that is health, right? A lot of the things that we're seeing that are taking young men in particular out of here early is health. So our new sponsor is 120 Life. And the seriousness of high blood pressure, again, it is the #1 risk factor for mortality. Number 1 in 2 adults have high blood pressure, meaning that there is a 50-50 chance that you too could be affected. So taking control of your blood pressure, it is critical for your health. It's critical for living long. You want to be around here a long time? It's important. 120 Life is not just for high blood pressure, though. It's also beneficial for those with diabetes. Managing high blood pressure can help with diabetes, making 120 Life a valuable tool for overall health. It's been endorsed by over 1,000+ doctors, 1,000+. 120 Life is trusted by healthcare professionals, with hundreds of doctors recommending it to help manage blood pressure naturally. So you can see the results for yourself. 120 Life provides viable, measurable changes in your blood pressure. Just use a simple monitor at home to track progress, and a drink that you'll actually enjoy. It actually tastes great. 120 Life is a blend of great tasting superfruit juices. Unlike many health drinks, 120 Life is refreshing. It's flavorful, making it easy to incorporate into your daily routine and lifestyle. No risk, all reward. 120 Life comes with a risk-free 2-week trial pack, meaning you don't love it, doesn't work, you can send it back. They offer a money-back guarantee. If your blood pressure does not improve, or if you are not satisfied, you can send it right back and get a refund. The Trust Factor, 120 Life Factor, is formulated with ingredients shown to help with high blood pressure naturally, and it's also endorsed by thousands of health professionals. Thousands of people have benefited from this, making it a trusted choice for managing your blood pressure. So here's what I want y'all to do. Jason and I are going to try this. We are going to do it. We are going to put up some video of us trying it. We both tasted it. It tastes great. Jason's the one with the blood pressure. My blood pressure is pretty normal. I don't know why his would be higher dealing with me. I can't see why that would be. I really can't see why that would be. But we're both going to try it. Okay, so for a limited time, we want you to try it too. Try 120 Life and you can get a 20% discount, 20% off. And all you have to do to get that discount is to use the code JOY, J-O-Y, if you are a lady that wants to try it, or Reid, R-E-I-D, if you're a man that wants to try it. See, we're going to set up a little competitive thing here. If you're a lady, text JOY, use the code JOY. If you are a man, text or use the code Reid, R-E-I-D.
Come on,
use
guys.
that at checkout at 120life.com. Jason's going to try it and I'm going to try it. And let's see how our blood pressure does and how our health does. 120 Life offers a risk-free trial, again, with a full refund. If you do not see lower numbers in 2 weeks, send it back. So just go to, here's where you're going to go. You're going to go to 120life.com. 120life.com and use the code JOY if you are a lady, or Reid, R-E-I-D, if you are a gentleman, to save your 20%. Now, there is nothing to lose except your high blood pressure numbers. Go to 120life.com, use the code JOY or Reid to save 20% off today. Remember, you must use the code JOY or Reid to get this special offer. Now, these statements have not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This is not from a doctor, okay? So we want to make sure that you know that. Thank you all for listening. Let's all talk about what's happening in Jamaica right now. All of our relatives that are in the Caribbean, including my godmother in Jamaica, are all battening down the hatches. Hurricane Melissa is barreling toward Jamaica. Warnings have been issued in the Bahamas as well. Widespread flooding, landslides, destructive winds, flooding rain is also a grave concern in Hispaniola and Cuba. The forecast is actually really, really scary. So if you are in South Florida, if you're anywhere in the Southeastern United States, or if you have family in the Caribbean, this might be a time to reach out to them to make sure that they are okay. Because this is like the scariest thing possible. These hurricanes, the Caribbean is so beautiful. But the downside to it is the risk of hurricanes. So I want to just prayers up to everyone that is in the Caribbean. So please, please, please batten down the hatches, call your relatives who are there, and let's make sure that we make sure that our relatives and our family members are safe. It is a Category 5 hurricane. This is really, really scary. Category 5 is what Hurricane Katrina was, I believe. I need to double check that and make sure, but I believe Category 5 was a Hurricane Katrina was a Category 5. So be careful. I also want to talk about what's happening in New York. So the early voting started on Saturday over the weekend. The daughter voted. Hopefully everybody's going to start and do your early voting because it's actually really important. But Zohran Mamdani has brought out the absolute cuckoo crazy in everyone in both parties. I mean, the Democrats who can't seem to endorse him, they're like hiding under the bed begging that no journalist will ask them if they've endorsed Zohran Kwame Mamdani. I like the fact that his middle name is Kwame, that he used to be a rapper. He's originally from Uganda, but he came here when he was 7, naturalized in 2018. His middle name Kwame, his father named him after Kwame Nkrumah. His mom, Mira Nair, is the lady who made Mississippi Masala. She is the director of Mississippi Masala with Denzel in it. So he kind of has like black cred. And he was a hip hop artist earlier in his earlier life, and then he became a city councilman. But he's brought out the cuckoo crazy in people. 2 House Republicans are now saying they want to denaturalize and deport Zohran Kwame Mamdani. They want to denaturalize him, take his naturalized citizenship away, and deport him. Representative Randy Fine, who of course is from Florida, told the Rupert Murdoch New York Post last week that the federal government should, quote, review every naturalization in the past 30 years, starting with Mamdani, but also including Ilhan Omar, who came as a refugee, a child from Somalia. From Sudan. Somalia. Sorry. He wants to review both. He called Mamdani a threat to the nation and said, this is the quote, "I know that there's a lot of us that are very, very concerned about the enemy within. People who have come to this country to become citizens in order to destroy it." He says, "I just think we need to take a hard look at how these folks became citizens. And if there's any fraud or any violation of the rules, we need to denaturalize and deport." Randy Fine told the Post. I don't have an element for this. I'm just reading this. I'm just telling you this. He dismissed any logistical concerns about yanking the citizenship of this naturalized citizen or any other naturalized Americans after they got elected to top jobs. And he says, if they're not Americans, they can't be in office. Just like straight up racism and Islamophobia. He's not even like hiding the racism and Islamophobia. He's just doing it. Since June, his colleague, another Republican, Congressman Andy Ogles of Tennessee, both of them are still getting paid, by the way, to work during the shutdown. Andy Ogles has been pushing for a Justice Department probe of Mamdani, claiming that the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York City lied on his sworn statement when he became a naturalized citizen in 2018. Per the Post, Andy Ogles says, "Deport Mamdani," branding him an anti-Semitic socialist communist, which are different things, who will destroy the great city of New York, which I'm sure Andy Ogles really cares about the city of New York. I'm sure he cares so much. He says in 2018, when he was naturalized, he failed to disclose some of the things that he had been doing, one of which was joining the Democratic Socialists of America. Democratic socialism is not regular socialism. It's like basically like FDR socialism. But anyway, he says it's a communist organization. No, it isn't, which quite frankly would have disqualified him from becoming a United States citizen. I don't know if you guys realize this, but there is an overt disqualification from becoming a naturalized citizen if you are a member of a communist organization. It is sort of a Cold War vestige. You cannot be an avowed communist and go ahead and get citizenship. But the Democratic Socialists of America are not a communist organization. First of all, socialism and communism are different things. Socialism, even regular socialism, is different from communism. But Democratic Socialists, the Democratic Socialists of America, basically it's what FDR was. It's saying that there should be the commons. You should have common good. and that the government should intervene in times of need. FDR intervened a whole hell of a lot during the 1930s because there was a Great Depression caused by the bankers, the same kinds of billionaires who are profiting now, triggered a collapse in the economy because of their just raw greed. They drove the economy over the edge, and then the government essentially had to step in and make sure people didn't die of starvation in the streets. And FDR provided federal jobs. Tennessee Valley Authority and others provided federal work, like literally work that was provided by the federal government. They even employed artists. A lot of the murals you see around DC were painted during the FDR era because they would employ artists to paint things. That's what they did. They were painters. Here, we're going to give you a job to paint a mural for us. That's what democratic socialism is. It's saying that the government should intervene when you have a catastrophic economic condition. In the city of New York, the catastrophic economic condition is that billionaires are buying up entire blocks of New York City and then jacking up the rents on an entire city block because they own the whole block. And they're just jacking up all the rents. And they're making New York unlivable. You can't live in New York. You barely can live there without a roommate. A studio apartment, I've said this before, Jason and my youngest son, you know, my studio apartment, when I lived in a studio apartment, was $450 a month. A current studio apartment where he lives is $2,800 a month. That's a lot of inflation. That's a lot of inflation. And what Mamdani is saying is that the government should intervene. Grocery prices in the city of New York are extravagantly high, like insanely high. And he's saying that the government should intervene to make life affordable. That is democratic socialism. It isn't communism. Communism and socialism are very different. But what democratic socialists say is that the federal government can step in and make things cheaper. One of the things that he's saying that you could do is to provide competition to private grocery stores by having the public open a grocery store. It's what they wanted to do with a public option under universal health care. When Obamacare was first proposed, it was supposed to also have a public option, meaning you have a public nonprofit that competes with the private options so that that competition brings the prices down because the private options now have to compete with a cheaper publicly owned option. When there's a cheaper publicly owned option, the private options will tend to bring their prices down because they want to get the customers that will go to the public one. That was what we were going to do with healthcare. But that got stopped because you had a guy named Lieberman, Senator Lieberman from Connecticut, whose wife was in the healthcare industry, who said, we're not going to allow that. They didn't allow the public option. That had to die so that you could get Obamacare through the United States Senate. Mamdani is proposing to do something similar. And by the way, this has been done in other states. I believe Massachusetts tried this as well, and it's a very successful model. If you have a publicly owned grocery, that grocery will tend to charge less for most items. And therefore, the private groceries will have to compete with it, and all the prices come down. Similarly, using the public dollar to compete with the real estate market that is currently being bought up by billionaires, they don't even live there. If you go to the Miracle Mile, is it called the Miracle Mile, Jason, in Manhattan? I think it's called the Miracle Mile in the 50s.
Isn't it Billionaires Row?
Billionaires Row. Sorry, Miracle Mile. That's Chicago. The Billionaires Row. You have billionaires from Saudi Arabia, from Japan, from China.
57th Street.
57th Street in Manhattan. And they own entire, blocks and blocks or many, many apartments, and they don't live in them. Billionaires are buying up entire city blocks of Manhattan. And then they're the landlord under different LLCs, different names. And you think you're dealing with landlord A and landlord B. It's the same landlord.
And most of those places are empty, the investment real estate.
Empty buildings that jack up. Do you realize when we lived, when Jason and I and our kids lived in downtown Brooklyn for a time, we lived in a building that was a relatively new building, but next to it were the Fort Greene projects. They were literally next to it. And then next to the Fort Greene projects, between our building and the Fort Greene projects, was another building where a 4-bedroom apartment cost you $8,500 a month. Not $850, $8,500 a month. We moved when our rent got jacked up to $5,000 a month for a 4-bedroom apartment. Again, when I was a youngin', and I wasn't a youngin' I ain't that old. My first apartment in Fort Greene, which is one of the most expensive parts of New York City, my apartment, I had a 4th floor walk-up studio apartment. It was $450 a month. My second apartment that I had was also in Fort Greene on the corner of DeKalb and Flatbush Avenue with a park view. Both those two apartments had a park view, a full park view.
DeKalb in South Oxford.
DeKalb in South Oxford, right where Spike Lee was at the time. $900 a month for a second story, one bedroom, $900 a month. The third apartment that I had in Fort Greene, I moved to Fair Amount, was $1,200 a month. And then the first apartment Jason and I had together in around the corner from the Brooklyn Museum, one of the most expensive parts of Brooklyn, New York right now, and one of the most gentrified parts of Brooklyn, but it was literally a block from Brooklyn Museum, $1,200 a month. That apartment had 2 full bedrooms.
Duplex.
Two full bedrooms.
Glass elevator.
Duplex. Glass elevator. Jacuzzi tub. And a deck. And a deck. My producer is in my ear hyperventilating. She's hyperventilating right now.
Don't forget the skyline view on the roof.
And we had a skyline view on the roof, $1,200 a month. $1,200 a month. And when we moved to Florida, because we needed more space in the backyard, because we had our baby was a toddler, the baby that just voted for Mamdani. She better voted for Mamdani. She did. We moved, and our apartment in our townhouse in Broward County, Florida, was also $1,200 a month. Right now, the apartment we moved out of, the last time we checked, was $3,500 a month, and I'm sure now it's about $6,000 a month. That is why Mamdani is winning, because Mamdani is saying that he will do something to intervene using the power of the government, the city government, to intervene and make prices lower. That is something that is within his capability. And everybody's like, well, how's he going to do that? He's just going to drive the rich people out. I promise you, they're not going to leave. New York City is where Broadway is. It's where Wall Street is. And by the way, Donald Trump saying he's going to defund New York City if Mamdani wins. No, he won't. That's where Wall Street is. He's not going to defund his friends. The people who got the biggest tax cut are in New York City. They're the Wall Street people who he just gave a tax cut to and who are paying for the Epstein ballroom. All right, coming up on the next hour of the Joy Reid Show, I am going to explain to you, and this is going to blow your mind, but I want you all to take this in because I'm going to explain it to you, how Donald Trump and George W. Bush are essentially the same president. Same guy. Donald Trump and George W. Bush, essentially the same president. Only Trump is Bush without the charm. Don't believe me? I'm going to explain it to you. And with that, I do want to welcome you to hour 2 of the Joy Reid Show. By the way, if you have not hit like and subscribe, now is your chance. Smash that like and subscribe button. Very important to do that because the algorithm needs to have the likes and subscribes in order to help this channel to win. We're excited. We are way north of 300,000 subscribers. Let me just go ahead and look at our number. We're at 340 and counting, 348.03 as of this moment.
We're trying to get to 500 by your birthday, December 8th.
December 8th of the year of our Lord 2025. We're trying to get to 500,000 subscribers. We are chasing that number.
That might be a little bit too ambitious. How about 400,000?
I think we can get to 5. I believe in us. I believe in you all. Make sure that you share. The share button is really important to that because if you hit share, you can tell a friend, tell a foe, tell somebody who's like a Trumper and share it with them just so they can hate watch. Hate watch. Sometimes you want to hate watch. It's a thing that some people like to do. And so we want to give them the opportunity to do that as well. But yes, I do want to go back and make sure that I am looking at the Hurricane Katrina history to make sure, was it a category 5? It started as a category 3, but it ultimately became a category 5, just to confirm that. So Hurricane Melissa that is barreling toward Jamaica is that strong of a hurricane. It's a Hurricane Katrina style hurricane, which is terrifying. So we really hope and pray that Jamaica will be okay. But welcome. One of the things we want to do in this hour, I am going to tell you all how George W. Bush and Donald Trump are one and the same. And then we're going to open it up to an AMA. We're going to open it up to your questions. After I present this to you, you can tell me whether you agree, disagree, whether you think that my analogy is wrong, whether you think it's right. I'm going to open it up. We're going to let everybody in, not just Team TJRS members. Anyone in the chat will be able to answer questions. We're going to have somebody also monitor the Substack chat. So if there are any questions from Substack, Nitha and friends, can y'all please let me know if you guys can see the Substack chat, or Winnie or whoever's watching that chat, please let me know if there are any questions over there. We're going to do that as well. But all right, let me now pose this to you. This is my proposition on this Monday. If you actually think about it, the only real material differences between Donald Trump and George W. Bush are Trump's tacky obsession with gold Bush's obsession was with like rustic things, right? He liked like a rustic feel. But they're very similar in the way that they have been president. They were both draft dodgers during the Vietnam War. Both of them got their daddies to call in favors to get them out of serving in Vietnam. Trump had supposed bone spurs. Bush came up with some other excuse, but neither of them served, right? But at least W, I will say, at least seemed to have some respect for the troops. He did respect the military. Trump, he didn't call them losers and suckers like Trump. Both have sort of connections to Bavaria, Germany. I would say there is an allegation that Bush's grandfather looked the other way about the Nazi regime in the 30s. There were also allegations that Bush's grandfather might have been one of those who was looking at maybe overthrowing FDR in that coup plot that was to overthrow the FDR government and replace it with an American Führer. So they both have a sort of weird connection to that kind of odd 1930s throwback. Neither of them are very bright. Neither of them has a stunning command of the English language. Bush had his malapropisms, which you call Bushisms. Trump basically speaks in geriatric gibberish, or he kind of does this breathless voice, but he speaks like a 12-year-old or 2-year-old. I want to play you this compilation that I did of, they're both nepotistic, nepo babies, as the chat is pointing out. They're both nepo babies. That is very true. But let me play you this compilation that I put together of Bush and Trump, and you tell me if you don't think that their verbal malapropisms are similar. Here they go.
This is an impressive crowd, the haves and the have-mores. Some people call you the elite. I call you my base.
We got an issue in America. Too many good docs are getting out of business. Too many OBGYNs aren't able to practice their love with women all across this country. Our enemies are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we. I think they misestimated the will and determination of the commander-in-chief, too.
Have they seen him dance?
Well,
Because they might want to rethink.
Oh, that's not good.
I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
Shifting production to Thailand and to Vietnam. Thailand and Vietnam. They went MAGA. You know, Argentina, great guy. He's a big Trump guy. He loves Trump. I love him because he loves Trump. When he called, I took his call. Anybody that loves me, I like them. You know, I was very honored as a man. Viktor Orban. Did anyone ever hear of him? He's probably like one of the strongest leaders anywhere in the world. And he's the leader of, right? He's the leader of Turkey. Fronts on both Russia. Hello to a place where we've done very well. Sioux Falls. Thank you very much, Sioux Falls. So, Sioux City, let me ask you. Did you just see Maduro, Venezuela? It's unbelievable. We are a nation that just recently heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat. Also, we have many Azerbaijans in our room. We have some incredible people in our room. We have so many that we just can't. But we have some people. We have some people in our room that I'm not going to mention because they fully understand why.
They fully understand why. Some people in the chat pointing out that Bush did like Mexicans. He didn't dislike them. And his sister-in-law was Mexican-American, Jeb Bush's wife. So yeah, he didn't dislike the Mexicans like Trump does. So that is a difference as well. Some folks in the chat also asking about Hurricane Maria. It was, in fact, a Category 5, the cyclone that hit Puerto Rico and devastated it, the fourth most deadly hurricane on record in history in 2017. So that was also a Category 5 Hurricane Maria. So yes, that is absolutely true. But yes, Donald Trump and George W. Bush, both, they don't speak too good. They don't speak very well. So there you go. Now, both of them have also an election, a relationship to stolen elections. Now, this is where the similarity really kicks in. I want you to take a look at this a clip of this 60-minute story. And this is about Donald Trump's Stop the Steal rally ahead of the January 6th election. The person who is sort of featured in this is a guy named John Eastman. This is how 60 Minutes reported about John Eastman, the guy who didn't care how many laws had to be broken in order to ensure that Donald Trump stole the presidency, essentially stayed in the White House after losing the election to Joe Biden. That guy, he was a mentee of Clarence Thomas. One of the things he said in emails at the time was that Clarence Thomas, Justice Thomas, was critical to their strategy to get the election back into the courts. He thought Clarence Thomas was very important to that he was a mentee of Clarence Thomas. And he was a mentee back when Clarence Thomas, Uncle Clarence, was the head of the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. Basically, he was put on the EEOC to undermine the agency. And then George Bush Sr., who put him on the EEOC, put him on the Supreme Court to replace Thurgood Marshall. Clarence Thomas, shudder, I think, when I think about it, was the replacement when Thurgood Marshall passed. And he was put there to serve a very specific role as a Black justice. And John Eastman went on to have a role in trying to make sure that Dubya, the son of the man who put his mentor on the Supreme Court, would become president in 2000. Now, this is what the Washington Monthly says about Dr. John Eastman. He was called upon by the Florida legislature, the same guy, John Eastman, who you saw in that 60 Minutes piece, to give expert testimony about constitutional issues arising under the elector and electoral college provisions of the Constitution. He was retained by the Florida legislature to craft legislation that would protect that state's electoral votes. And he participated as an attorney on behalf of the George W. Bush presidential campaign in post-election litigation in Florida. John Eastman, in 2000, was involved in the attempts to secure that election for George W. Bush. He was the person who was advising the George W. Bush campaign how they could use and manipulate the Constitution to ensure that W got into the White House. Same guy, John Eastman, 20 years apart. Also involved in both attempts to steal an election in the United States, or in Trump's case, to refuse to leave office after losing an election, Roger Stone. Remember kooky Roger Stone, the guy with the Nixon tattoo? He was behind, back in 2000, what was called the Brooks Brothers riot. I want you all to listen to, and what that was a group of, I'm going to let you listen to this. Independent investigative journalist Jennifer Cohn interviewed an author named Jonathan Simon back in 2020, and they talked about the Brooks Brothers riot. This is C3. Take a listen.
And it was a real harbinger of things to come.
And some of the people involved there was a recount effort initiated by Al Gore that, of course, the Supreme Court stopped. Some of the people that helped George Bush stop the recount are in even greater positions of power today. And I was hoping you could tell me who some of those people are.
Well, I mean, Roger Stone was one. He was, I think, chief organizer of the Brooks Brothers riot. He was certainly one of the organizers. The Brooks Brothers riot was this very physical attempt successful attempt at intimidating the counters who were doing the manual recount that had been mandated in Florida by banging on the windows and screaming all sorts of things. There was like 50 or 60, many of them coming down from congressional offices, Trent Lott's office, the senator, and really basically acting like stormtroopers and stopping that recount process and delaying the recount process, which turned out to be a big part of why the recount was stopped. There wasn't enough time for it. So he was one. Brett Kavanaugh was another. There are quite a few who have moved on, I guess you'd have to say, to bigger and better or bigger and worse things. And so we really have a history that goes back to 2000 and has been pretty continuous since then of attempts and successes at interfering with the electoral process by domestic actors. We're not talking about Russians here.
That's right. It's a very good distinction to make. I believe John Roberts.
So, okay. So we've had then a continuous effort from 2000 to 2020 to ensure a Republican president, and it's backed in both cases by very wealthy actors And the participants, two of them are now the same. But they're not the only two that are the same. But before we get to some of the others that are also consistent from 2000 to 2020, I want you all to listen to Roger Stone himself talking about, and this was a documentary in 2023 called A Storm Foretold. And
what they're assuming is that the election will be normal. The election will not be normal. Oh, these are the California results? Sorry, we're not accepting them. We're challenging them in court. If the electors show up at the Electoral College, armed guards will throw them out. I'm the president. You. You're not stealing Florida. You're not stealing Ohio. I'm challenging all of it. And the judges we're going to are judges I appointed. You. You're not stealing the election. That's basically what Bush did to Gore. So, you know, if they want to run a bunch of fake ballots, we'll have an investigation. We'll say these ballots are fake. Yep. Your results are invalidated. Goodbye. That's the way it's going to have to work. Wow. It's going to be really nasty. Wow. But you cannot count on, we're not going to get an honest election. Right. So let's say that Trump is a little behind right now, which he probably is. That doesn't bother me. But even if he wins an honest election, we're not going to have an honest election. Got it. They're stealing this blind in Florida right now. So, wow. You know, it's not the first time it's happened in this country, and it happens around the world. Yeah. So he's going to have to fight for the presidency in the courts. Our next election will be decided in the courts. Wow. Because they cheat, and we don't cheat. Yeah. We've never cheated.
Yeah, we don't cheat. The guy behind the Brooks Brothers riot, which again was a mini version of the 2021 insurrection. The 2021 version was a bigger version with more people storming the Capitol. But in 2000, Roger Stone put together a group of staffers who came downstairs into where people were counting votes in Miami, in Florida, and stormed it like stormtroopers, created so much noise, banging on doors, terrifying the people who were counting the votes in order to stop the count. They ultimately did stop the count. And then the hand-picked 5 members of the United States Supreme Court who came from the Heritage Foundation decided in favor of George W. Bush over Al Gore, making George W. Bush president. Clarence Thomas was on that court. John Roberts, who's the current Chief Justice, was one of the lawyers who was advising Bush's team, the current Chief Justice. Bush then nominated him to the court and made him Chief Justice. Brett Kavanaugh, one of the other people that Donald Trump put on the court, was in private practice at the time, also helping to prepare the Bush team to go to the Supreme Court for that. Guess who another advisor was? Amy Coney Barrett. One of the other advisors to the Bush team at the time was providing research assistance in the case. That's 3 people of the current 9 on the Supreme Court who were personally involved in trying to ensure that George W. Bush became the president of the United States in 2000. 20 years before, a more violent version of it was attempted in the Capitol. The 2001 was successful because they made their way to a Supreme Court that had 5 Republicans on it who were going to clearly pick the Republican. So that's another similarity between the two. They're both sort of wheeling around this idea of stolen elections. And the idea of stolen elections, including the notion that the machines were rigged, came from 2000. They took what liberals were concerned about, the machines not being accurate, in 2000. Remember, it was Democrats who objected, Black and one Asian American Democrat in the United States House, who objected to the certification of the election. The objection, certification was objected to by Democrats at the time, who were saying that what was happening in Florida could not have been clean. And they needed a senator to sign on with them in order to create an objection. In 2021, on January 6th, there was a need to have a House and a senator, a Senate member and a House member get together and object mutually to the certification of the election. That's what they were trying to intimidate the House and Senate to do. That riot, that insurrection, was about trying to goad a senator and a House member to do the exact same kind of objection that failed in 2000 when Democrats tried to do it. Again, Bush and Trump. Another thing that's similar about the two of them, both of them are apparently going to go down in history for dragging the U.S. into ginned-up wars based on phony intelligence and a false provocation. In Bush's case, he used the very real terrorist attack on 9/11 as an excuse to launch a forever war on terror, which started with Afghanistan, but eventually somehow wound up shifting to Iraq. He and his entire government marshaled a lie that Saddam Hussein was responsible for the 9/11 terror attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. And so we had to go after Saddam Hussein. We had to do regime change because it was part of the war on terror. They even got Colin Powell, General Colin Powell, to lie in front of the United Nations. They got him to lie with Dick Cheney saying, you need to do this presentation about the supposed chemical weapons that Saddam Hussein was going to unleash on the United States, even though he did not have ballistic missiles that could get to the United States. They made him do it because Dick Cheney said, you've got higher approval numbers. You need to be the one to make this case. And he did it. He had his men, Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, all of them worked on selling this war to the American people. Remember, the saying was, you can't sell a war in the summer. They wanted to wait till fall because they said, Bush's brain, he was like, you can't sell it in the summer. You need to wait till fall. They even got a pliant media to go along with it. The New York Times participated in it. And by the way, just a little note on Rumsfeld and Cheney. They went back to the Nixon administration, right? We have an old picture of Cheney and that's Cheney and Rumsfeld, the same two guys. That's Cheney and Rumsfeld during the Nixon administration in the 70s. So the same guys, Roger Stone, Rumsfeld, and Cheney, all came from the Nixon administration. Nixon tried to govern extra legally outside of the law, ended up having to resign before he get impeached. So they failed there. They were like, Roger Stone actually says, there's a great documentary called Get Me Roger Stone, in which he openly says, I was looking for a better Nixon. They tried with George W. Bush, and then they got Donald Trump. They rolled the dice 3 times to try to get an autocratic president who would govern as an autocrat. There was a thing back during the Bush era called the Project for a New American Century. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was this think tank. George W. Bush's brother, Jeb, was the one who was closer to it, where they were trying to get the United States to go to war, not just against Iraq, but also Iran. And by the way, the Iraq war was being pushed, heavily sold to the administration, not just by the neocons who said, we have to do these 3 simultaneous regional wars. We need to get into a multi-theater war in the Middle East in order to secure our dominance, the axis of evil. But the axis of evil included North Korea. It was North Korea, Iran, and Iraq. That was the axis of evil. And that we had to go to war against these 3 countries in order to secure American dominance worldwide. This was their update of the Cold War. This had to happen. And the Project for the New American Century had that Rumsfeld, Cheney, that crowd that were selling this to George W. Bush. He was just an idiot. Like, George W. Bush wasn't the smartest guy in the world. He wasn't really that ideological either. But what he was super popular with who? Evangelical Christians, just like Trump. And he had evangelicals wrapped around his finger. Remember A Jesus Camp? Go see that movie. They worshiped George W. Bush the exact same way that they worshiped Trump. And by the way, the other entity, this is going to blow your mind, it might, that was selling the idea of us getting into a fighting, shooting war with Iraq was a very familiar face who was testifying as a private citizen before our Congress on September 12, 2002, following his first term as Israel's prime minister. Ladies and gentlemen, Bibi Netanyahu.
There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. And there is no question that once he acquires it, history shifts immediately. The dangers posed by a nuclear-armed Saddam were understood by my country 2 decades ago, well before September 11th. In 1981, the late Prime Minister of Israel, Menachem Begin, dispatched the Israeli Air Force on a pre-dawn raid that destroyed the Iraqi nuclear reactor at Osirak. This probably took place months away from Saddam's ability to assemble the critical mass of plutonium for the first atomic bomb, or more than one. And today, the United States must destroy the same regime because a nuclear-armed Saddam will place the security of our entire world at risk. And make no mistake about it, if and once Saddam has nuclear weapons, the terror network will have nuclear weapons. 2 decades ago, it was possible to thwart Saddam's nuclear ambitions by bombing a single installation. But today, nothing less than dismantling his regime will do, because Saddam's nuclear program has fundamentally changed in those 2 decades. He no longer needs one large reactor to produce the deadly material necessary for atomic bombs. He can produce it in centrifuges the size of washing machines that can be hidden throughout the country.
Now, that's not true. None of that was true. None of that was true. But Bibi Netanyahu was doing the hard sell in 2002, saying, you got to go to war with Iraq. It's going to be easy. You can get in there. You're going to be greeted as liberators. Bibi Netanyahu, right? That brings us to Trump, Bibi's buddy, who, by the way, claimed that he was against the Iraq war, but he actually praised the Iraq war. But he claims, I was against stupid wars. I'm going to end these stupid wars. Well, he now appears to be setting up his own Saddam Hussein, named Nicolas Maduro, which Nicolas Maduro, he sees it coming. He sees that he is being set up to be Donald Trump's Saddam Hussein. And I want to note that Nicolas Maduro is a terrible human being, as was Saddam Hussein, who is tormenting his own people, locking them up if they have any dissent against him. He is a Saddam Hussein. But that doesn't mean the American people want to go to war with him. Do we want to have a shooting war in Venezuela? And just as there were the neoconservatives and the Israelis and all of these other people and the Project for a New American Century people who were all gassing George W. Bush up and using his pliability to get him to go along with doing this war that made no sense whatsoever. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. In fact, if 9/11 was pursued by religious extremists, they would have killed Saddam Hussein because he was a secular dictator and considered an apostate by Al-Qaeda. They would have loved to saw his head off. They weren't allies with him. They couldn't have been allies. One was a secular dictator, fascist, and the other were religious nuts. But Donald Trump has created his own version of this. And he's got his own version of the tea-sipping Iraqi exiles who were in Europe egging the Bush administration on to please overthrow the Iraqi government so they could go move back in and take over pre-Castro Cuba style. Now, remember the woman who beat Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize and then praised him to the hilt and said he's the one who should have won? Maria Corina Machado. If she theoretically were to become the leader of Venezuela, she would be a Trump ally if Maduro was overthrown. In fact, she might be the only woman that Donald Trump would ever support installing in a presidential office. I want you guys to watch this interview that Ms. Colina, the Nobel Peace Prize recipient, who's weirdly easy to find for somebody who's supposed to be in hiding. I mean, the Nobel Peace people just called her on the phone to tell her she won. And apparently she's easy to book as well. Here is an interview that she did with Donald Trump Jr. on his podcast, Triggered, back in February. And I want to note the timing of this interview. It was released just hours after the Trump administration canceled the oil licenses that allowed Chevron, the oil company, to operate in Venezuela. Here's the interview she gave, a piece of it.
Forget about Saudi Arabia. Forget about the Saudis. I mean, we have more oil. I mean, infinite potential. And we're going to open markets. We're going to kick off the government from the oil sector. We are going to privatize all our industries. Venezuela has huge resources: oil, gas, minerals, land, technology. And as you said before, we have a strategic location, hours from the United States. So we're going to do this right. We know what we have to do. And American companies are in, super strategic position to invest. This country, Venezuela, is going to be the brightest opportunity for investment of American companies, of good people that are going to make a lot of money.
Infinite supplies of oil. She gives that interview to the president's son months before, or shortly before Chevron is kicked out of Venezuela. They cancel their ability to operate there. And then suddenly there's a narco terror war out of this country. Suddenly, this is the basis of narco-terrorism all of a sudden. In that same interview, she goes along with the idea that Maduro is some sort of narco-terrorist. Donald Trump is trying to be President McKinley, the Gilded Age Republican president who not only presided over the Gilded Age, who was a tariff fanatic, had 4 separate recessions during his presidency because tariffs wrecked the economy then, as they are wrecking it now, and who is the president who presided over the Spanish-American War. After a lie about the Maine being sunk by the Spanish caused the U.S. to go to war. Actually, he got a declaration of war. This was probably the last time we got a declaration of war. Well, actually, this in World War II. They declared World War I and World War II. They wound up in the end, the United States, following that war, takes control of Puerto Rico and the Philippines and Guam and occupied Cuba. That's why we have Puerto Rico, because of the Spanish-American War. And we want to note that Cuba, where we used to occupy, gangster capitalists were unleashed to gobble up that entire economy. Americans were running everything. They had all the businesses, the best land, and the inequality that they created in Cuba is what eventually led to the Cuban Revolution, the communist revolution by Fidel Castro, to kick out Batista, who was the military dictator, who was the US's guy. So we'll have our guys in there. I want to also note, by the way, the Iraq War was about big oil being able to get in there. Our toppling of Mossadegh in Iran was about Mossadegh, the leader of Iran, attempting to have his country own their oil when the U.S. wanted to privatize it and put it into the hands of our big oil men. You see where I'm going with this? Donald Trump is regularly bombing boats in the Caribbean and killing fishermen in the Caribbean Sea, claiming that they're really drug traffickers in drug trafficking boats, even though people in his own party, including Republican Senator Rand Paul, openly admit that that is a lie. That Maduro, who again is terrible, just like Saddam was terrible, has nothing to do with narco trafficking, just like Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11. I played this before, I'm going to play it again. Here is Rand Paul debunking the entire bullshit about Maduro.
Number one, there is no fentanyl made in Venezuela. Not just a little bit, there's none being made in Venezuela. These are outboard boats that, in order for them to get to Miami, would have to stop and refuel 20 times. They're in all likely going to Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island right off of the coast of Venezuela. So there's a lot of reasons to be worried about this. But number one is the broader principle of when can you kill people indiscriminately? When you're at war. That's why when we declare war, it's supposed to be done by Congress. It's supposed to be thoughtful. It's supposed to be debated. And we're not supposed to do it willy-nilly. And then when you have war, you just kill people in the war zone. And even then there are rules of engagement. But interdicting drugs has always been a criminal activity and a criminal anti-crime sort of activity where we don't just summarily execute people. We actually present evidence and convict them.
Yeah, that's the way it normally goes. But no, Ms. Machado says, oh, no, that's not true. He really is involved. In this same interview, this Nobel Peace Prize laureate, which you got to kind of look at the Nobel people funny, right? She publicly endorsed the military strikes on her country in an interview with Fox, of course. Of course, she talked to Fox. She told Maria Bartiromo that Trump is stopping the war and ending the war that Maduro started, is what she told Maria Bartiromo this Sunday. Again, she's real easy to book for somebody that's supposed to be in hiding. She says he's absolutely Maduro behind the drug smuggling vessels that are approaching U.S. waters. Here's her quote. Everybody knows Maduro is the head of the biggest drug cartel, Cartel of the Suns, also the head of the Tren de Aragua, a criminal network that has committed crimes in the U.S., Canada, down to Argentina and Chile. There's no evidence of that, just like there was no evidence against Iraq. But she has said previously that the most important thing to know is that Venezuela has unlimited, Citgo is Venezuelan oil, that they have unlimited oil and that they will privatize it and put it into the hands of Americans, presumably, right? Understand that in Iraq, ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, Shell, the West's largest oil companies are in Iraq now. The results of that war was not liberation for the Iraqis. It was oil contracts for American oil giants. It was a reconstruction contract for Dick Cheney's company. They wanted in Iran in the 1950s because they also have huge proven oil reserves, but none are, I don't even know if they're as big as Venezuela. Venezuela has massive proven oil reserves. And Trump, so therefore Trump is pulling in Iraq for the exact same reason Dick Cheney and them wanted Iraq. He's pulling in Iraq for the same reason Iraq happened, the oil. And by the way, this is not me just saying this just because I'm an anti-Trump person, even though I'm deeply anti-Trump. Trump says it because Donald Trump's brain don't work so good. So he just admits it. Here he is in 2024, just admitting that he wants the oil.
How about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door.
He's saying we want to get the oil. And while they're doing that and preparing to do this war for oil there, they're letting these same oil companies drill in Alaska, in our precious wilderness. They're letting them run wild throughout the United States. I wouldn't be surprised if they're drilling in Yellowstone next. They're preparing to turn over our timber, our natural parks to whichever of Trump's billionaire friends want to use and destroy that. He's dismantling the country and selling it for parts. The same way we've dismantled Iraq and sold it for parts, the way we wanted to destroy and sell Iran off for parts, the way that we wanted everything, Vietnam, you name every single war. It's about American billionaires and the billionaire class wanting to eat off someone else's lives, destroy their lives, destroy their poor, destroy their people, make them hungry and turn them into essentially desperate savages who then can be used for labor however we want. Donald Trump is literally turning this country right back to where it was when George W. Bush left it. Even the screw up on Katrina, he's basically failed to help the people in California. He's saying, I'm not going to help y'all out. Maryland had massive flooding. He won't even give them any money. Donald Trump even is having his Katrina moment. God forbid this hurricane that's about to hit the Caribbean hit the United States. If it hits a blue city, he's not even going to help them. He's made that very clear. He operates like a gangster. And he's using the exact same tactics that George W. Bush's administration used to silence dissent when he was prosecuting his forever war on terror. In fact, Trump is using the exact same emergency powers. His Project 2025 uses the same unitary executive theory. Do you remember that? That was actually first heard, at least by me, when Professor John Yoo put it forward during George W. Bush's term. The unitary executive, this executive that's all powerful, that started under Bush. It was Bush's DOJ that fired maybe a dozen U.S. attorneys for refusing to find phony voter fraud cases. They tried to spy on Americans without warrants, reading our library material. They were spying on knitting circles that were anti-war old ladies. And you know who rushed in to try to defend our civil liberties when the Bush administration tried to spy on us without warrants? And who rushed to Attorney General John Ashcroft's bedside to stop them? James Comey. James Comey. We used to call him Comey the homie, because he rushed to the bedside of the then Attorney General to say, y'all can't spy on Americans. The father of the woman who prosecuted the diddler, which is why Diddy's going to get a pardon. James Comey. And okay, I'm gonna make it even worse. I'm gonna make it even worse. You know who the FBI director was back then during the war on terror? Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller of the Mueller report. That's why Donald Trump hates Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller was literally the FBI director during this. And if you recall, again, we were losing our civil liberties then. The same conversations we're having about Trump now, we were having about Bush at the time, that he was acting like a monarch, that Dick Cheney was acting like a monarch. Patriot Act, the Patriot Act, literally. And you know who signed on to that crap? The only reason, by the way, we have Pelosi, the reason we got an historic Speaker Pelosi in 2006, was because Hurricane Katrina was such a devastating failure and Bush's reaction to it that there was a midterm sweep of Democrats and it swept Pelosi into power. That's why we have that's why we had a first female speaker. But yeah, the Patriot Act, the Forever War, most of the Democrats went along with it. Most of them voted for it because they were so afraid of saying no. Everyone was putting their flag pins on. The media was terrified. I got out of media because of this. It was literally like the McCarthyism age. You couldn't speak out against it. You couldn't say you were against the war. You weren't allowed to speak. There was no free speech during Bush. People during that election in 2004, the one I worked on the other side, you had to sign loyalty pledges to George W. Bush. Do y'all remember this? The evangelicals were acting the exact same way. And Bush was promising them, what was he promising them? That he was going to overturn Roe v. Wade. He just didn't do it because he was at least smart enough not to try to do that and unleash a civil war in the country. The one member of Congress who voted no against that war, Barbara Lee. Barbara Lee, the current mayor of Oakland, who we had on this show. She was the only one who had the courage to vote no against the war on terror. She was alone and got death threats because of it. And they started with Afghanistan and eventually just moved that shit right over to Iraq. Bush is the one who started this idea of the unitary executive. Nixon tried it. When a president does it, it's not illegal. That was Nixon. His same people then wind up in George W. Bush's administration. Even before that, Herbert Walker Bush's administration was the first one to take media along on a war and make them report the way they want them to report. Then Bush, the junior, W, his FBI was spying on anti-war protesters, taking away our civil liberties, suppressing journalists, suppressing dissent, and leading an evangelical, white evangelical Christian base. Exact same thing. It's literally the same thing. Homeland Security, Homeland Security was invented because of this. The Department of Homeland Security, which I think sounds way too German for me. It's giving Weimar Republic. The Department of Homeland Security was created. Thank you to my producer who was created because of George W. Bush and the so-called war on terror. And it's still here, and it is now where ICE is. You see where all this is the same? The Federalist Society, the producers of Project 2025, stacked Bush's Supreme Court. Remember Harriet Miers? George W. Bush tried to be a little bit independent and put his own lady up there, a friend of his, Harriet Miers. They were like, hell no. They came down on him like a box of, they threw a box of bricks on his head, and he had to withdraw her and put in one of the Heritage Foundation people. Honestly, the only real difference between Bush and Trump, as far as I'm concerned, is that when his term was over, Bush left. And in some ways, with some regrets, he's now like painting. It's like he feels bad about all the people who died in his fakey war on terror. He didn't want to pardon Scooter Libby, who was, one of Dick Cheney's henchmen. He refused to pardon him, and he and Dick Cheney stopped speaking, because this guy, Scooter Libby, was trying to frame an ambassador that was telling the truth that there was no yellow cake coming from Niger. But Trump, on the other hand, well, he's taking the unitary executive thing to the next level because he ain't leaving, y'all. The global cartel that he's putting together is making him and his tech bro billionaire friends, they're building up a surveillance state thanks to his billionaire friends. His oil and gas friends are drilling up and eating up the country's resources from the Alaska all the way to wherever. His crypto friends are enriching him, making him finally into a billionaire. The failed real estate guy's finally a billionaire off of crypto. Everyone's making crypto money. We don't know how many members of Congress are also betting in the crypto market. The bankers and insurance companies eating. Everybody's eating except you, the people who need food assistance, the people who need healthcare. Y'all not eating. If you need rent, y'all not eating. They're eating. All of these same billionaires, the billionaire class that's been trying to take over this country, that threatened to take it by force during FDR, because FDR had the nerve to try to let regular people eat. They wanted to overthrow him and give us a Führer in the 1930s, maybe including one of the Bush people. Their kin. They tried to overthrow FDR because they didn't like the fact that this multimillionaire, a billionaire at that level at the time, a rich man, turned against his own class and said, I'm going to do some stuff to make sure regular people can eat during this depression that y'all caused. He turned against his class, did all of this New Deal stuff. And by the way, he was president for life. Recall, even that, he was president for life. He was 4 terms because there was nothing in the Constitution that said he couldn't be. He ran 4 times. Both Russia, Stalin, and the United States, FDR, we had a president for life, which is Trump is also trying to recreate. But he did it and used his 4 terms to let people eat. Trump is unleashing the billionaire class to gobble up and eat up every single thing in this country, to eat our natural resources, to eat the money. The tax cuts is a giant rebate to them. They don't pay taxes. They get rebates. You pay. You have to fund it. I have a chart. I have to find this chart. Jason, I'm gonna find this chart. It is a chart that will show you the difference between what it will cost to fund your healthcare versus what it will cost. There it is. Y'all look at this chart. Thanks to Karen Finney for this chart. The tax cuts that you paid for the billionaire class will cost us $4.5 trillion. That is the cost to you. Your grandchildren's grandchildren will be paying this off. Thanks to Janweek 9347 for the tip. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. 4.5 trillion. At the way bottom, in the middle, that's TCJA. That is the tax cut bill that was passed in 2017. It's a weird way that this chart was set up, but combined, those 2 things are what you're going to be paying for the tax cuts. Okay, the yellow and the red line are what you are paying for these tax cuts. To extend them is 1.9 trillion on top. The Trump tax cuts are $4.5 trillion. That's what you owe. for the rest of your natural life and your grandchildren's natural life. Look at the little tiny blue thing. That is what it would cost to extend those subsidies. Republicans are saying we can afford the red line and the yellow line, but not the blue line. The blue line is for you. The blue line is what you get. If they extend the subsidies, that's $360 million with an M. The tax cuts are $1.9 trillion to extend, and $1.9 trillion initially. That was the initial cost of the tax cuts when they were passed in 2017, okay? And again, I want to explain again, both the subsidies in the blue line, blue bar, and the yellow bar of the 2017 tax cuts were passed to be temporary. They were passed to be temporary in order to make the math work. In order to make that yellow line that short, they made them temporary, and they made the ACA subsidies temporary. The blue and the yellow were meant to be temporary. And if you extend them, then they get a little bit taller. The red line is what it costs to make the yellow thing permanent. The yellow line, for those who are listening in the podcast, we have a yellow bar that is $1.9 trillion, a middle bar that is yellow. $1.9 trillion was the initial cost of the Trump tax cuts. 90%, 80% of it went to the richest Americans. 1,000 billionaires in the country got most of it. The majority of that money, it didn't, yes, small. You know why farmers like Trump? Because most farmers are small business people, and the value of their farms is normally north of $1 million. So they got a tax cut. That's why they like Trump. That's why they like tax cuts, right? Because the value of your farm, if it's more than $1 million, you got a nice juicy tax cut. Now you lost your market because they don't give them no way to Argentina. You can't sell your soybeans now, but you got that tax cut. $4.5 trillion is what it costs to make them permanent. Your little subsidies is nothing. $360 million. It's nothing. But they won't pay for that because we can't afford it. Everybody's eating except you. Stop the steal, man. Stop the steal. It's time for us to say it and say it with our chest. Stop the steal. Because they're stealing from you. Do you understand that the billionaire class has been trying to steal from you literally since they got shut down by the income tax in 1913? Before that, they were eating freely. In the Gilded Age, Trump's favorite era, there was no income tax. They just ate for free forever. There was no requirement to get, okay, let's move on. Let me play for you that this is not just here. They're doing it all over the world. This is C13. Here are two Americans talking about their big plans for the Middle East.
We're working with a group of people who have been working on master plans for the last 2 years.
So there are plans already.
We have plans already. We have a master plan already. And by the way, and Jared's been pushing this, and we're working together.
Look at Jared's face like, dude, why are you telling? He's like, why are you snitching? Stop snitching. So they got master plans for Gaza too. There, I've heard there's natural gas off Gaza, and it's real estate that he said is prime real estate. And I also remind you, that's why they want Greenland. There's rare earth minerals under there. Trump wants to control that too. It's all the same thing. They're glad that the ice is melting in Alaska. More oil under there. Trump and his billionaire goonies, they have master plans to run this entire earth in gangster capitalist fashion. It's an international gangster capitalist syndicate. And it used to include one more member, Jeffrey fucking Epstein. Used to be a part of this syndicate, only he was the guy bribing the billionaires to make sure that he had something enough on them to do the bidding of whoever he was answering to. This is not just happening in the US, it's Europe, it's the Middle East, it's all over. And while Trump is happily planning his Epstein ballroom and his Führer bunker and plotting a war to install a puppet president in Venezuela like Putin used to have in Ukraine and take their oil, and they're not paying for food stamps, not paying SNAP benefits, not paying healthcare and all that stuff, they're also making the argument that forget the 42 million Americans on SNAP, forget the 22 million Americans who need Obamacare, forget all of that. Forget all of that. We're going to make sure we pay these troops, though, because we don't want a military coup. We're going to take this $130 million from Mr. Mellon. And by the way, just let me debunk. Mr. Mellon is not directly linked to Epstein that we know of. I know that was going around, but Mellon Bank, which his family doesn't own anymore, they are one of the banks that paid a massive settlement to the Epstein victims. But his bank, which has merged with Bank of America, it's not related to Epstein directly. So just be careful with that. That's some misinformation that's been going around. But I do want to play for you one of the people who is benefiting from this the most, because the idea of having a king is always about the Benjamins. It's about money. And they know, and Congress is going to look the other way. They're not going to do anything. John Roberts wants a king. He wanted one in 2000. He wants one now. There's no one to stop this. No one. Unless Congress gets back to being normal and they start stopping this, that's the only way. Let me play Governor Pritzker warning what this is.
Well, the broader goal, I believe, is the militarization of major American cities before the 2026 elections. Let me be clear about what's going on the streets of Chicago. They have dressed ICE and CBP in fatigues, put them in military gear, including with automatic weapons, and had them marching up and down major streets in downtown Chicago. It's a signal that they're trying to send that it's okay to have troops on your street, that this would be a welcome thing for people who live in Chicago. Nobody here welcomes it, by the way. I mean, literally, as they're walking down the street, people are yelling at them. But they think they can get people used to the idea. And next year, I fear that what they're going to do is deploy these folks eventually to polling places and say they're protecting the vote. Donald Trump knows that without shenanigans and without these breaches of the Constitution, that he's going to lose the Congress. And if he loses, he's going to immediately, in the aftermath of the election, do what he said he might do in 2020, which is use the military to confiscate the ballot boxes and count the votes, claiming that there's fraud. Remember, he's called up all 50 states' election data to the Department of Justice because they want to review all 50 states for fraud. And they won't tell you exactly what they're going to do, but I fear that these are all connected. And this militarization, even without National Guard or military troops on the ground, you're seeing ICE act like a militaristic organization. You're seeing CBP act like it. One more thing. CBP, I want to remind you, the Customs and Border Patrol, they're supposed to only operate within about 100 miles of a border. We're not anywhere near a border here in Chicago. So how can they operate here? Well, they're claiming that Lake Michigan, the shores of Lake Michigan in Chicago, those shores are the border of the United States. But Canada's an awful long way from here across Lake Michigan. So we know that they're using it again as a pretext. They want CBP here. Those are the folks that you saw in uniform marching up and down the streets. Greg Bovino, who led the effort in Los Angeles for the Customs and Border Patrol and ICE, is leading the effort here in Chicago. And you saw what happened in Los Angeles. They incited people, and they're doing that here in Chicago. We want them. I mean, if they're going to do that, they got to go. We honestly, they got to get the hell out of Chicago if that is their aim. But that is what Donald Trump, I believe, is trying to do, incite it so they can bring more troops in, invoke the Insurrection Act, and militarize Chicago and other major cities.
That is what's happening. And in addition to that, I want to note that Dominion voting machines, Dominion voting systems, which was the subject of so much sturm and drang among Republicans and so much, paranoia, has now been purchased by a Trump fan, a former Republican election official, John Poulos, confirmed. John Poulos, the former Dominion CEO, confirmed the sale in a statement. This company called Liberty Vote, which is a Trump fan, they now own the largest voting machine company in the country. Here's Gavin Newsom also saying, wake the hell up, y'all. This is a plot.
Wake up, America. Wake up. You will not have a country if he rigs this election. You will have a president who will be running for a third term. Mark my word. I wasn't exaggerating when I said that I received in the mail a Trump 2028 hat from one of his biggest supporters. These guys are not screwing around. The rules do not apply to him. The most corrupt president in history. He doesn't believe in free enterprise, crony capitalism. He is wrecking this country, wrecking the economy. He's a lawless president. Wake up, America. Wake up to what's going on.
Here's Steve Bannon just saying the thing.
Secretary Hegseth,
well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28, Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28. We had longer odds in 16 and longer odds in 24 than we got in 28. And President Trump will be the president of the United States, and the country needs him to be president of the United States. We have to finish what we started. And the way we finish it through Trump is a vehicle. I know this will drive you guys crazy, but he's a vehicle of divine providence. He's an instrument. He's very imperfect. He's not churchy, not particularly religious, but he's an instrument of divine will. And you can tell this of how he's pulled this off. We need him for at least one more term, right? And he'll get that in 28.
You're not driving me crazy. I'm really I'm trying to understand the coherence of the things you've just told me in the last few minutes. On the one hand, you've said the Constitution is fit for purpose. Secondly, you've said that President Trump needs another term, even though the 22nd Amendment makes pretty clear that he cannot have another term.
Why does it make that clear?
Because he's on his second term already.
At some point in time, we will make sure we go through, Zanny, and define all those terms.
But even if you find a way to undermine you will be undermining the spirit of that amendment, even if you find some way around it. And to those
Can the American people, if the American people, with the mechanisms we have, put Trump back in office, are the American people tearing up the Constitution? Would that be tearing up?
Well,
would the American people be going against the spirit of the Constitution, ma'am?
I think yes, actually, because I think what you will end up with is a populist justification for a quasi-dictatorship.
That's not true at all.
That's what it sounds like.
Trump is a dictatorship. Did you just see the compromises he had to make on the big, beautiful bill? You see the compromises he has to do on everything, on accommodating Zelensky, on what President Trump. President Trump is nothing but a series of negotiations to kind of keep this thing rolling forward, where he's having trade-offs all the time.
Steve, you've just spent the last 20 minutes telling me we have to smash the other side. There's no room for debate. There's no room for compromise. We must smash them. And now you're telling me this is a negotiation. I mean, that's
no.
On his policy.
First off, the only way President Trump wins in 2028 and continues to stay in office is by the will of the American people. Okay? And the will of the American people is what the Constitution embodies. And so I think we're going to be in good hands there. Okay. We need to finish what we started. Yeah. And President Trump is the instrument, a providential instrument to finish this job.
And what is the job? The job is to ensure that the super rich, that the billionaire class has total control over the country, and that they smash all dissent. I want to note, let me play another one. Let's play Pete Hegseth talking about how they're going to physically stop dissent.
Secretary
what they have.
Hegseth, sir, a memo circulating on social media details the establishment of a National Guard response force that's going to be trained in crowd control and civil unrest and deployed in all 50 states by April of 2026. Can you verify the authenticity of that memo, and do you have any more information on the operations?
I'm not going to answer particulars on something that may be in the planning process, but we definitely do have multiple layers of National Guard response forces, whether it's in each state, whether it's regionally, whether it's Title X active duty, whether it's Washington, D.C. We've got a lot of different ways that constitutionally and legally we can employ Title X and Title 32 forces, and we will do so when necessary.
And that's him saying yes. And by the way, to those in the chat, I agree that I love British journalists because they don't play the games that American journalists do. That British journalist, she said, no, you're going to answer this question. And she got in them. And that was excellent. A great interview of Steve Bannon. And by the way, when Donald Trump heads back into his Fuhrer bunker and unleashes the military crackdown on the U.S. that Hegseth just described to ensure that he doesn't have to face re-election, the press coverage at the Pentagon is going to be handled by the pillow guy. The pillow guy. The next generation of journalists, after the real journalists left and walked out and were like, we're not going to play games with y'all. It's the pillow guy's media outlet, Lindell TV, the right-wing websites, Gateway Pundit, Human Events, the Post-Millennial, Just to the News, the National Pulse, and the Epic Times, which, by the way, is the media arm of the Falun Gong right-wing religious cult, whose main purpose is to oppose the communist government in China. You've probably seen a lot of their papers everywhere. If you do a Google search, they are always the top thing that comes back. Epic Times spends a ton of money. They're based in New York. But yeah, that's who's going to be covering the Pentagon now. So who's going to even report on the truth? There's going to be no real outlets there. Even Fox said no to the propaganda game. We're almost done. I know we're going a little bit long. Yeah, the pillow guy's got his own media outlet. And then I want to lastly, the last thing I want to play for you guys before we let you go is the way that they're justifying all this. You heard Steve Bannon say Trump was a providential instrument. They're using people's religiosity. America is the most religious Western nation. And so finally, the billionaire class have figured out the trick to get Americans to accept an autocracy or a plutocracy in which the super rich run the country, operate the government. The government is just a Duma that rubber stamps and keeps handing money to super rich people, and they don't pay taxes. That is the government they're trying to create. And they use religion as an opiate of the masses, as Karl Marx used to say. Here is Peter Thiel, who is the real boss of J.D. Vance, who's been going around the country giving lectures on the Antichrist. I promise you that's what he's been doing. Here he is, an interview he's done.
This is my very specific question for you, right? Is that you're an investor in AI. You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance, in technologies of warfare, and so on, right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far, right?
Yeah,
I mean, isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival?
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing.
I mean, to be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule.
Well, but again, there are these different gradations of this we can describe, but is this so preposterous, what I've just told you, as a broad account of the stagnation that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism? This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and we've submitted.
Who's always talking about peace and safety, saying they've ended multiple wars and they're going to end crime? If we're talking about Thessalonians and the Antichrist being somebody who's constantly talking about peace and safety, who would that be? What national or international figure might be doing that? And also, Peter Thiel don't look well. His coloration and Elon Musk are about the same. It's like a sort of a weird gray. Why do they both look and sound like that? And then they glitch when they talk. It's like they can't talk. They're both these weird guys. Let me play another bit. This is a second piece of him talking about the Antichrist and expounding a little bit more on his thinking about what the Antichrist wants to do.
We have the mechanisms that would make world government a gigantic global surveillance state is plausible.
That seems plausible too. And then I think, again, to come back to the Soloviev-Benson plot hole, on its own, they both seem not that desirable. Why would we have a crazy surveillance state? Why would we, why would we do this? But if you're scared enough of these things, that's the weapon. And this is sort of where my speculative thesis is that if the Antichrist were to come to power, it would be by talking about Armageddon all the time. And
Peter Thiel, the Antichrist would talk about Armageddon all the time. He'd scare people and then offer to save them.
Yes, it's the 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and so, which is nothing wrong with peace and safety, but you have to sort of imagine that it resonates very differently in a world where the stakes are so absolute, where the stakes are so extreme, where the alternative to peace and safety is, Armageddon and the destruction of all things. And then that's where peace and safety gets you way more than it would have in 1750.
René Girard, in I Saw Satan Fall Like Lightning, one of his books, the Antichrist boasts of bringing to human beings the peace and tolerance that Christianity promised, but has failed to deliver.
There are probably, I think there are all these elements where It's downstream from Christianity. You can think of, the poor shall inherit the earth, Sermon on the Mount. Marxist theory is we're going to be more Christian. We're going to accelerate it. We're going to bring it about faster. So there is, the Antichrist probably presents as a great humanitarian, as a great, it's redistributive. It's as an extremely great philanthropist, as an effective altruist. All of those kinds of things. And these things are not, simply anti-Christian, but it is always when they get overly combined with state power that something is very wrong. There are sort of ways Christ wants to unify the world. You have the parable of the Good Samaritan, where you should take care of people even if you're not related to them, and it's good to act like the Good Samaritan and to take care of people who are not just in your family or tribe or country. But then if you force everyone to be a Good Samaritan and you force a borderless world, it's somehow adjacent. It's an intensification, but it's somehow also very much the opposite.
So you see what he's saying there? He's saying altruism and goodness and trying to help people, take care of the poor, take care of your neighbor, take care of people in your country who are not in your family. That altruism is satanic. That is where the Antichrist comes from. And when he says force people to be generous, meaning taxation, what he has essentially been saying in these lectures is that taxing people like Peter Thiel is Antichrist behavior. That taxing them and forcing people to pay for the commons, meaning healthcare that's in the commons, Medicaid, Medicare, that is what the super rich have always said. They've always said that what's evil that FDR did was to force the entire country to pay taxes in order to ensure that no one went without health care and could retire in dignity. They believe that that is evil and satanic. And now Peter Thiel has put it into a doctrine that essentially says, if you tax me, you're the Antichrist. But having a giant surveillance state and constantly having Donald Trump talking about being the only one who can bring peace and safety. Oh, no, that's not the Antichrist at all. He then later goes on to say Greta Thunberg is probably the Antichrist. I'm going to stop there, y'all. We got to play a moment of joy. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, my doctrine on how George W. Bush and Donald Trump are effectively doing the exact same thing, but it goes back even further. It goes all the way back to really 1913, the first time that we had a major income tax, when the super rich have been trying since then, and especially since FDR, to undo and break down the 20th century system that created the middle class, that makes it possible for you to not die poor in this country, that gives you a floor under you. They want that gone. They want to remove the taxes upon themselves, remove all regulation. They want to drill coal gut. They want to destroy the country physically and then move on to wherever their next place is, just the way those white South Africans used up South Africa and then moved on to here. And Peter Thiel is one of those white South Africans. They literally want to use up our country like an old dirty dish rag and then move on to the next civilization they can eat up and eat and eat and eat. They are relentless and their hunger never ends like vampires.
Well, you remember Elon wants to get to Mars now.
And then they want to go to Mars. When they're all done, right, then they'll go to Mars, eat that up, drill that up, destroy that up, and they want to live forever and do this for all of time. And Donald Trump is their instrument. Who's always talking about peace and safety, Peter Thiel? Trump. Trump is the one who says, only I can protect you. I am your vengeance. I will get rid of crime. I will fight all of your enemies. Trump is the one doing that. If anyone's acting Antichrist behavior, it's your boy, Donald Trump, that you paid for. And your boy, J.D. Vance, who was the last person to see the Pope alive. All right, we're going to play our moment of joy, guys. Thank you very much. We didn't have time to do a whole Q&A, but we will do a Q&A coming up on the show. Appreciate everybody in the chat. And now it is election day in New York City. Please get out there and vote. I'm openly rooting for Mamdani because I think we need a change. The only thing that will stop these billionaires is for us to use our final year when we know we have free and fair elections. That's this year. This might be our last chance. We have got to do everything we can to put a House of Representatives in place that will fight him by cutting off Trump's coins, cutting off his allowance. And we've got to get mayors and governors in place that will fight him. We cannot have appeasers. Appeasing didn't work in the 30s. It will not work now. It will not work. We've got to have fighters. So please vote. If you're in New York City, you can vote there and make sure that you vote in all these elections. The Democrats ain't perfect, but the Republicans are rolling with the people in the Nazi group chat. Let's play our moment of joy. And it, of course, is about Mamdani, the guy that the right wants to denaturalize.
Together, New York, we're going to freeze the Together, New York, we're going to make buses fast and together, New York, we're going to deliver universal. We will make our city one where every person who calls it home can live a dignified life.
Amen, amen. Let's make it so that every city in this country is a place where we can live dignified lives. Billionaires, we are not going to allow you to steal our futures. We are going to stop the steal. Thank y'all for watching. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. See you on the next The Joy Reid Show. Thanks to everybody who bought merch and is shouting me out. Appreciate y'all. See you on the next Joy Reid Show. Peace.